Mr. Mayor, we're now live.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Due to the COVID-19 emergency declaration, this meeting of Ajax Council is being held electronically and live streamed on the town's website. All members of council in attendance are participating by audio and video teleconference, and town staff are available throughout the meeting if council members have any questions on the agenda. For members of the public watching from home, please bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties throughout the meeting. I'll now call this meeting to order. Turn it over to Councillor Bauer to do the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Good evening, everyone. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas. More specifically, the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home to the Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action in acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations toward truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Moving on, does any member of council have any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, hearing, seeing none, please note, Mr. Clerk. Moving on to resolutions, we have first a motion to suspend the rules of procedure. Moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Crawford, that the rules of procedure be suspended in order to introduce a closed session item without notice regarding a personal matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. We're not going to have questions on that. Those in favor of adding that item, please, or suspending the rules, sorry. That's unanimous. Thank you. That carries. Moving on to adoption of the minutes, we have moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Lee that the following minutes of previous council meetings be adopted: the special meeting of June 16th, the closed session meeting of June 16th, the regular meeting of June 21st, the special meeting of July 13th, the special meeting of August 31st, and the closed session meeting of August 31st. Any questions or comments, errors, or omissions on the minutes? Okay, hearing, seeing none. Those in favor of approval? That is carried. Thank you very much. I saw all hands. Mr. Clerk, were there anybody that had questions submitted under question period?
Mr. Mayor, we did not receive any questions on tonight's agenda. However, we did receive a number of additional correspondence related to departmental report item 7.4.1, which was circulated to council before today's meeting.
Thank you very much. Moving on to delegation and presentations, we just have one, item 5.1, presentation from Durham Regional Cycling Plan. We have Anthony Caruso, Senior Planner, Regional Municipality of Durham, Danielle Culp, Planning Analyst, Regional Municipality of Durham, and Greg Pereira, Manager of Transportation Planning and the Regional Municipality of Durham. Folks, whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Great, thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us this evening. My name is Anthony Caruso, and I'm a senior planner with the transportation planning team. Together with my colleague Danielle Culp and our manager Greg Pereira, we will be presenting an overview of the recently completed draft Regional Cycling Plan 2021. We would also like to acknowledge the work of our consultants, WSP Canada and Share the Road Cycling Coalition, as well as all of the support we received from both regional staff and area municipal staff, along with the public. Next slide, please. The Regional Cycling Plan was initiated in the winter of 2020, and the work was divided into 3 phases as shown here. The Regional Cycling Plan was initiated to update the 2012 RCP in order to address gaps in the existing cycling network, identify new routes and facility types based on provincial and international best practices, including the identification of over 200 kilometers of new cycling routes, of which 85 kilometers of new regional routes will be implemented in the first 10 years of the plan. It was also initiated to improve coordination and implementation practices and respond to the changing changing policies and priorities of the province, region, and of the area municipalities. Next slide. As part of the process to develop the regional cycling plan, engagement was both extensive and wide-reaching. While COVID-19 required us to shift our focus, the project team transitioned to more online workshops, online surveys, although we did manage to organize 2 pop-up events in the summer in Pickering and Port Barry, where we got to speak directly with community members from a safe distance. We received an overwhelming response from the public. Our 2 public surveys garnished over 900 individual responses from the public, where we retained thousands of points of data to help us improve this plan. Throughout the entire process of updating the plan, we engaged with a variety of stakeholders, including regional and area municipal staff, MTO, the conservation authorities, Metrolinx, the Durham Active Transportation Committee, including many of the local area municipal committees and cycling groups. Next slide. After listening to both the public, key stakeholders, regional and area municipal staff, we co-created this vision for the RCP. The vision for the RCP is a plan that supports the planning, design, implementation, and promotion of a connected, safe, and accessible region-wide primary cycling network. The network accommodates people of all ages and abilities while considering the unique trip types and preferences of those who live, work, and play within the region. Next slide. Next, we'd like to provide you with a highlight from some of the recommendations of the plan. Next slide. So the updated RCP builds upon the success of the current plan to help improve coordination, enhance facilities, and expand cycling connections between and within our communities to create a cohesive network of accessible, safe, and continuous routes for people of all ages and abilities. The vision of the primary cycling network focuses on strengthening the network and expanding connections to key provincial, regional, and local destinations to support a wide range of cyclists and trip types. Over the next 20 years, it will provide 1,000 kilometers of cycling facilities, including 217 kilometers of new routes to form the spine of the network to complement the broader cycling network, which, as you can see from the table, is comparable and consistent with other regions across Ontario. Next slide. The routes of the plan have been phased over a 20-year timeline. This phasing builds upon the 2012 RCP and the 2017 Durham Transportation Master Plan approach, which establishes 2 planning horizons: the short term, which is in the first 10 years, and the long term, which are projects beyond the 10 years. The plan is focused on the first 10 years, where we'll see 131 kilometers of local routes added to the primary cycling network and 133 kilometers in the long term, which will require a bit more in coordination with regional and municipal staff, along with other key agencies and partners. Next slide. This slide shows the various routing, existing and new routes being proposed as part of the update to the RCP and Ajax. A total of 6.3 kilometers of new local routes and almost 14 kilometers of regional routes have been identified in the updated plan. Next, I'd like to hand the presentation over to my colleague, Danielle. Danielle?
Thanks, Anthony. I'll now take you through the facility types proposed for the RCP. Next slide, please. The regional cycling plan includes a range of cycling facility types to support different trip types and cyclists, which reflects a core objective of the plan to include facilities that are accessible to people of all ages and abilities. These facilities include greater separation from traffic or are located on roads with lower volumes and speeds. Next slide, please. The RCP proposes a range of cycling facility types for Ajax, including paved shoulders, buffered paved shoulders, signed routes, multi-use pathways, and cycle tracks. Next slide, please. We will now dive deeper into the cycling strategies and recommendations of the 2021 Regional Cycling Plan. Next slide, please. Equally as important as identifying cycling infrastructure and routing is the financial considerations and implications. 3 funding approaches are being recommended for consideration through the plan. The proposed funding approach for the RCP aims to leverage existing tools which have already demonstrated success and also modify or adopt new tools where necessary to create an effective funding model that maximizes the region's return on investments in cycling. The intent is not to pick one approach, but to consider all three options for adoption and implementation to ensure that the actions contained in the RCP are appropriately supported from a monetary perspective. These include maintaining current funding streams, which includes existing funding streams to support cycling at the regional level, including current capital and operating budgets. It also includes adapting current funding streams, which includes updating some of the existing streams like development charges and the cycling plan formula to reflect changing circumstance and emerging best practices. And lastly, enhancing funding streams, which includes enhancing the regional annual transportation capital plans to include short-term infill projects and the identification of financing strategies through the region's long-term capital planning process. Next slide, please. In order to help support the implementation of the RCP and the proposed cycling strategies, two key supports have been identified, including an active transportation financing strategy and active transportation staff resources. The active transportation financing strategy includes developing a long-term strategy to provide funding to support the implementation of cycling infrastructure along the PCN and other strategy components. The key objective of this proposed support is to provide financing for the implementation of the region's portion of the cycling plan and allow for more flexibility and opportunity to advance infill and priority regional cycling projects. The active transportation staff resources support proposes dedicated staff at the regional level to directly support the implementation of the RCP with a specific focus on coordinating the day-to-day implementation of the RCP, which was identified as a need by stakeholders during the consultation and engagement process. The key here is really to help provide direct support to both area municipal staff and regional staff involved in the implementation of the RCP through support for program delivery, improvement of coordination, and overall consistency in the approach of implementation. Next slide, please. The plan also identifies 4 cycling strategies, which are meant to help establish the region's identity as a cycling destination. The 4 strategies include bicycle parking, wayfinding and signage, education and encouragement, and maintenance. They identify future actions to be undertaken after adoption of the plan in order to help the region champion and deliver active transportation in a more cohesive manner, and also create more of a one-window approach with stakeholders while improving the reach of programs and cycling supportive amenities. Next slide, please. The cycling strategies will require collaboration between area municipal staff, regional staff, and stakeholders in order to achieve the proposed actions. For example, it will be critical for area municipal staff to share insights on priorities and needs for bicycle parking, help identify locations for wayfinding signage, assist with event organization that's tailored to their local community needs, and help identify possible routes for a proposed winter priority network. We want to reiterate that this is very much meant to be a collaborative process between regional and area municipal staff. A proposed active transportation coordinator who could serve as a coordinator, administrative assistant, and program delivery agent would help ensure that all stakeholders have the necessary supports needed to help implement the various components of the RCP. Next slide, please. In terms of next steps, we'll be presenting the recommended Regional Cycling Plan 2021 to the Region's Committee of the Whole for consideration and endorsement on October 13th. This concludes our presentation, and we will now open it up to questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member of council have questions to the delegation on the presentation, please? Councilor Bauer.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. Is there any input regarding like a bike share program or bike rental facility like they do in Toronto? Is that something being considered?
Thank you, Councillor Bauer, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The bike share idea did come up through some of the public consultation as well with some staff. We are going to look at it further as we develop some of these recommendations in the plan. We didn't, it was very high level look at the moment as we put this plan together. We did look at examples in other cities, including Toronto, and seeing how it's working. There is some concern about the financial viability of a bike share program, but it's something definitely it's on our radar, and we will be, once the plan is approved next month, by regional council, it is something that we'll be looking at further and discussing with the area municipalities.
Great, thank you very much. That's all my questions, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to regional staff. Did I see on your diagram, the lines were really close together and small, so it's hard to see. Are you looking to put bike lanes on Bailey and on Taunton?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and to you, sorry, to the councillor that was requesting about Bailey and Taunton. For Bailey, I can pull up our map so maybe we can see this a little bit clearer together. Is it possible for me to share my screen to answer this question?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sure, one moment. Have the right map here. And then I share the correct screen. Okay. Let me know if you can see my screen, and I'm just going to zoom in a bit closer to Ajax. Is everybody seeing my screen here with the map of the facility types?
I can see it, yes. We can all see it.
Perfect. So there are certain segments along Bailey, as you can see here, that we are proposing facilities along. For example, segments here. So this line type shows an MUP, a multi-use pathway. And can you remind me, was it Taunton, the other one?
Yes, Taunton.
Yeah, so we do have a few segments, but the solid line type, just for a refresher, is existing, and then the dashed line types are proposed. So for both of these segments, we have multi-use pathways identified for these areas. Let me know if you need me to zoom in a little bit more as well. Happy to go to different areas.
No, so it's, okay. No, that's good. That's good. Thank you.
Perfect.
Anything further, Councillor Crawford?
No, thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? I have a few. I'm glad to see this coming forward. As you know, Ajax has been pushing for cycling for well over a decade now, and I think we probably are quite a bit ahead of most other municipalities being already achieved Cycle Silver. And this year we'll be submitting our applications, and I'm hoping to get us to Cycle Gold either this year or next year through Share the Road. So I'm wondering, you're talking about 6.3 kilometers of additional trail segments in Ajax. How do we relate to other areas in the region versus kilometers? 6.3 is, well, nothing short term, 4.7 infill, and 1.6 long term.
I think this is Anthony Caruso. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. I'll have to just double check in terms of kilometer lengths compared to other area municipalities, if that's the question you're asking. It is, you know,
like how do we relate to Pickering and Whitby? Because I would
well, as you alluded in the beginning, Ajax is definitely the furthest ahead, I believe, in the region in terms of developing its cycling network. So other area municipalities are definitely trying to catch up, and we've been looking at Ajax as an inspiration to fill in those gaps. And that's one of the reasons why we did the update to the regional cycling plan, was to identify those gaps. So areas where there are gaps in the network, we have prioritized to see those built sooner than other ones. Yeah.
Okay,
I can build, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I can build on that a bit. I have taken a quick scan at what we've roughly proposed, and it is fairly consistent, but I think based on what Anthony shared, Ajax is quite progressive in terms of the cycling infrastructure that's already on the ground. So a lot of what we're proposing are new connections within and between what's already been built. And there are, I think, other municipalities that we do see it range a little bit in some of our other more urban areas such as Oshawa. There's a few more kilometers added to their network, but in part it's because there's less built there today. And so I think that's where the balance comes into play. And the other piece is there's also a significant amount of regional routes. That's what I'm looking at right now is more from the local network supporting pieces of the PCN compared to that of the larger PCN overall, which also includes the regional connections. So I think overall it's fairly balanced across municipalities, but we need to be cognizant of what's already built and where others can really step up through our plan to make sure that there's connectivity across municipalities, not just within.
Okay, well, I guess what I'm asking is, you know, we have gone ahead and probably done most of the work for you at this point. But if the region's going to be putting assets in and paying for infrastructure in other municipalities, I would hope that, you know, we're going to maybe recoup some of our costs, because we've already paid all this money, and it's really not very fair to be now putting in infrastructure in other municipalities when we've already funded our own. And I'll liken this to pre-servicing employment lands, which the region is also doing with their reserve funds, where we did ours in 2007 at our own expense, but now the region is funding it in other municipalities. So will there be consideration to compensate municipalities that have already taken the initiative and spent the money to do a lot of this work, at the same time keeping the region updated all the way through over the last decade at least on our progress and what we've been doing and our recommendations for the regional cycling plan?
Through you, Chair. It's Greg Perm, Manager of Transition Planning. With regards to the network, the PCN, the Primary Cycling Network, includes both regional and air municipality network. And so the part that we have funding, I guess, commitment to or arrangement are for the MUPs, or the multi-use paths along regional roads, where there's a cost share. With regards to implementation of cost sharing on local roads, that falls to the air municipality. And so where there are infrastructure that we're proposing on regional roads, that would be our share, including that of MUPs or multi-use paths that would fall under the cost sharing agreement.
Just interrupt you there for a second. So Taunton Road, you're doing a couple of connection segments, but we have already incurred the cost of the multi-use path over a lot of it, most of it. So using that as an example, would we be expected to contribute to the region's connection portion going ahead, or would the region take care of that since we've already built the rest?
Through Chair, the portion of the MUP that would be built there would be a cost sharing formula applied. So the region would have a share in the air municipality, and it's all based on the priorities as to when it's to be built. With regards to past projects, I'd have to look into what that share was, but I believe that since 2012 we have that MUP cost sharing agreement where the region basically pays a portion of the MUP costs. Right, and the area municipality bears a portion of it as well. I think it's for the surface and also for signage, where the region basically looks at moving the utilities and the substrata.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit, excuse me, about the financing, because what is all this going to cost, and do you have approval? You have projects here that you've said are immediate within 0 to 10 years, but it didn't sound like the funding is yet in place.
Through you, Chair, we are going October the 13th for approval and endorsement, and part of this, especially from a financing perspective, will be rolled over the 8 or 10 year plan of the cycle. And so from a budgetary perspective, every year we'll prioritize and seek those particular funds. What we've done through the Works Department and Finance, that we've identified As opposed to having just a fund, we're building this into the roads capital project. Before, the active transportation or cycling has always been tied to roads projects. And what that has meant is that there's been a lag with regards to implementation. So now what we've done is identified infill projects that are separate or standalone that could be furthered and be placed in areas that are required, as opposed to waiting for a road expansion or resurfacing or anything like that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I'm also really glad to see that a lot of the things you're proposing are the multi-use paths. I'd much rather get the cycling infrastructure off the main roads. I want to ask you just one last question about Westney Road, because that Westney Road expansion north of Roslyn, I think was supposed to be done in 2012, and it got kicked down to, anyway, it's still not done today, but I understand it's going through, I think it's in detailed design, and it's supposed to be going ahead fairly soon. So I wouldn't want to see the region cycling plan impede that in any way, delay that in any way. How will this work that you want to do on Westney mesh with what's already planned for the widening of Westney?
Through your chair, with regards to those projects, we are coordinating with works departments and the municipalities on anything that's road related, and that will be captured in the capital works program. And so when it comes down to design, these particular plans are to inform that design as opposed to it being an afterthought. So therefore, when active transportation is considered part upfront, as opposed to trying to shoehorn it in as part of a project. And one of the things that we try to do is to identify the appropriate facility type. So therefore, based on best practices that we've had or costs, that now that we have a particular price tag, so that when a budget is formulated for a project, that the appropriate funds are allocated for active transportation. And it's not necessarily an afterthought, as I would say.
Okay, well, and that's why I'm asking about Westney, because that's already done. I think, like I said, I think we're already at detailed design on that. So this would have to, is this already part of that, or is this something that we're going to have to deal with now?
I believe there's a stub on Westney that is also already identified as multi-use path, right? So it would I'd have to go back and double check what those detailed design plans are to see whether they include, but it would make sense that there would be based on book 18 at MTO that would facilitate a multi-use path.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Anything further from members of council? Councilor Crawford, you want back in?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. My question, I want to go back to the Taunton Trail, multi-use trail. There's a number of councillors on this council that cycle, and we do go on that Taunton Road Trail quite often. It's one of my favorites. But I'm just curious, when that was designed, who designed it? Did the region design it? Did they put it, like, how does that work when you talk about sharing? Who makes those decisions?
Through your chair, with regards to the design, if it's a particular road project with regards to expansion, it's wrapped in as part of the design, and that design cost is shared or borne by whoever actually initiates that. It being a regional road, that cost would be shared as well. The cost formula that we've put together looks at a sharing of those particular costs up front. Before it was unclear because it was one, especially through the UMCC funding that we recently received and implemented, it wasn't clear with regards to what components of the cost. And so through this update of the regional cycling plan, the cost formula kind of basically labels it or basically pulls it out with regards to design costs.
So, but do you create the design?
It's a collaborative, yes.
Okay, so I personally would love to take or have one of you come on a bike along that trail, because at Harwood, it makes no sense. And it's not just bikes. I mean, there's people that are in wheelchairs. There are people that are walking. The design at Harwood, that trail, multi-use trail, makes absolutely no sense at all. I understand why it's there, but it is not safe. And that is an area that needs to be addressed. And there are certain transitions that the bump is so high, I don't know how a wheelchair actually gets over the hump. So I really think that it would be, instead of saying, well, that one's done, it might be a good idea to actually take a ride on there and see from Church Street right along there, kind of what cyclists have to do to try to attach themselves back up to the multi-use trail, because it's not as fluid as you would think it should be. Anyway, just a comment that might be completed in your plan, but it's really not safe in certain areas. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, thanks a lot for that comment. We did try to look at the network and identify certain areas that were not safe. And we, through our consultation with the public, we hope to try to identify some of those safety issues, but that's something that we could look at. And we'll take that into consideration. Thanks.
Okay, anything further? Councillor Dice.
Thank you very much. I wonder if you could help me with the map again. I'd like to know if there are any connections in Ajax that take us north of the 407, because those north-south connections are very important. A lot of riders do go up into the urban area or the green belt area in rural areas. So how many, if any, connections do we have that take us over the 407?
Councillor Crawford and I rode up there on Saturday.
I'm just sharing my screen here. Can everybody see
Yes.
my screen here? So I'm moving up the map. So there are a number of proposed routes that are that do provide north-south connections, more from the urban area, getting further north, and a range of facilities. So we see things like signed routes, paved shoulders, buffered paved shoulders. There are a few further east, so outside of our boundaries here, but that do provide more of that dedicated cycling facility or increased separation in terms of cycle tracks. But most of these, we are seeing that increase in the amount of routes proposed to help with those connections.
So just to clarify, there's no existing route over the 407.
No, through this plan, that was a key piece, is we were trying to identify ways to help with some of those barrier crossings. And so we've tried our best to identify future routes where we could see that occur, and also give people a range of facility types depending on their comfort level, and alternate routes that they can take to help facilitate those broader connections within and between different municipalities and across some of those major corridors like the 407 and 401.
So I would think those connections into the northern area would be a priority, would you not?
Through you,
Yes,
Chair.
and sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I think there would be a priority. And I think as other projects such as Brock, which has been identified by Metrolinx as part of the priority and also as a transitway, those would also be part of the expansion going through the north to provide that connectivity. We do recognize, and we also commented recently on the province's transition plan to look at the transitway across the 407, and we recognize that there are various points along there, and we're hoping that we can provide these particular connections to these communities north-south as well.
Well, I think it's imperative we do it as soon as possible. There's a lot of tourism advantages to this for the region in the north, and there's quite a lot of riders in the north. I see them all the time. My the other question I have is too, we've seen through COVID quite an increase of riders due to, not being able to do much else but go outdoors, and they have now experienced these wonderful trails, and there's a huge number of people now cycling. So has this been taken into consideration? Because I anticipate a few may drop off after COVID, but I think a lot of people are really enjoying this experience. So really, you've got more, cyclists out there than we ever had before. So is this going to kind of ramp up this plan to move forward more quickly?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe, yes, we've seen through the data and some of the statistics through things like Strava, that there has definitely been a huge increase since the pandemic in people cycling and using the routes that currently exist. That's one thing we did try and reflect somewhat in the plan, is this range of facility types, because we understand a lot of people are revisiting cycling after maybe not getting on a bike for a long period of time, and through the pandemic have become avid cyclists. We really want to provide a range of facilities to support different trip types and abilities and comfort levels. So we tried to reflect that in the plan, and then more from an opinion point of view. But what we are still seeing is, yes, there's been a slight shift, but we're still seeing that continued increase in cycling or appetite for cycling. And I guess on the piece you did mention trails. While this plan doesn't focus as much on trails, that is something we're looking to advance in the coming years through a trails master plan study. So while this is more focused on the on-road connections and infrastructure for cycling, there is very much that connection between off-road and on-road. And so through this work, I think it's going to set a strong foundation for what's to come for some of those other cycling amenities, to provide some of those connections, like you mentioned, to the north, where trail use is really key, and it becomes a really big driver and destination for people on bikes and other trail users as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the information.
Thank you. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. The MUPs on Taunton that we're so deeply discussing, who's in charge of the maintenance of these paths?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a local area municipality under the Municipal Act. It's a responsibility of the area municipality, of the local municipalities.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, further? Hearing, seeing none. Thank you, regional staff, for your very informative presentation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on, let me just pull up my notes here. Moving on to items of correspondence. I have moved by Councillor Khan, second by Councillor Dyes, that the report dated September 21st, 2021, containing items of correspondence be received for information. Do we have any polls in correspondence for discussion? Okay, hearing, seeing none. Those in favor of receipt? I see all hands. That carries. Thank you. Moving on to reports. We have our Community Affairs and Planning Committee 7.1.1 from September 7th. We have moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Tyler Morin, that the Community Affairs and Planning Committee report dated September 7th be adopted. Question or comments on the CAP report? Hearing, seeing none. Those in favor? Any opposed? No, that's carried. Moving on to the General Government Committee, the General Government Committee report of September 13, 2021, moved by Councillor Khan, second by Councillor Lee, that the General Government Committee report dated September 13th, 2021 be adopted. Any questions or comments on the GGC? Those in favor? Any opposed? No, I see all hands. That is carried. Moving on to departmental reports, 7.4.1 PDS 2021-33 official plan amendment application OPA 17A1 to do with medallion developments on Castle Fields. I have moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Tyler Morin, and I won't read them all. The council directs staff to advise the Ontario Land Tribunal that subject to the applicant providing Section 37 benefits to the satisfaction of the town will not object to OPA 17A1. And number 2 is very similar. I do have an amendment that I want to put forward, a couple of amendments, but I will open it to council if they have any questions before I move amendments. Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to turn over the chair to Councillor Lee. And I do have 3 amendments to move forward. The first 2 are simply adding some words to the first and second, and I had myself and seconded by Councillor Dyes. So the first is adding the words as specified in clause 5 of the resolution to the first piece. So basically after where it says section 37 benefits to the satisfaction of the town, and then add as specified in clause 5 of this resolution, and then do the same thing in paragraph 2 after satisfaction of the town, add the words as specified in clause 5 of this resolution, and finally add a new clause 5 which speaks to the specifics of the section 37 benefits to a total of $2.99 million that my understanding is has been agreed to between the town and the developer. And Mr. Romanowski, did you, I realize, and I'm not chairing the meeting, but those are my amendments. I didn't know if you were to speak to that or not. I'll turn it over now. I would like to speak to it, Councillor Lee.
And Regional Councillor Dyes, you're still comfortable seconding? Thank you. So Mayor Collier, did you want to speak on this first?
I would, but I wasn't sure if Mr. Romanowski wanted to speak.
So we'll let Director Romanowski answer the question.
Yes, if I could through the chair, thank you. Just to reiterate, as Mayor Collier has outlined here, at the September 7th Community Affairs and Planning Committee referred the report back to this meeting, directing staff to continue discussions with Medallion. Those discussions did continue later on that week with the submission of a formal letter offering certain community benefits with a dollar amount. The town went back and negotiated further improvements and an additional benefit on top of that, being specifically the construction of the two asphalt trails. That's point number 1, in addition to the 6 other points that were part of our previous staff report. Not to also mention that the 2 additional community benefits that were raised at the Community Affairs and Planning Committee with regards to the pedestrian improvements and traffic signals. We have landed in an agreement with Medallion with regards to the outlined benefits within the recommendation that you see on the screen, as well as the dollar amount for those benefits. I'm here and staff's here to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you very much.
Now I would like to speak to it, please, Chair. Thank you. I won't belabor the point. We've had 5 public meetings on this, and we've spoken quite a bit about this. The development itself is allowed under our official plan, the regional official plan. The only question that we have here is to do with the density. And I'll just point out that the building density is specifically set out for section 37 expenses in the Planning Act as far as density bonusing. And it's also section 7.1.2 of our own town official plan, which allows us to, when there is increased density, to get community benefits such as this. These are significant because this development is significant. And I want to make sure, and I'm sure all council will agree, that there will be some impact to this community. We're not able to stop the impact to this community. This is allowed, but we are able to get compensation to offset some of that. And I know it's not popular, but I do feel very strongly that being able to make sure that we get the traffic light, for instance, there at Hilton Gate, and getting the traffic calming in place, and getting the splash pad in Castlefield Park, and getting this large, almost 2-acre park that wasn't there before, and having the buildings reduced from 6 buildings to 5, And all of these benefits, although the residents might not like the idea, I think definitely make it a lot more palatable. And I was, as I said last week when we referred this, not willing to sign any document that had blanks that we were going to fill in later. I wanted to make sure that the Section 37 benefits were identified very specifically and agreed to by both parties before I put my name on it and before we put our council name on it. And we've done that now. I want to thank Mr. Romanowski and our staff for working so hard with the developer to get this done in a very short timeline. And I'm bringing this forward because I think this is absolutely the right thing to do in this area and fully support it. And I'll ask for a recorded vote, please, Mr. Chair.
A recorded vote has been requested. Councillor Dyes is the seconder. Did you want to speak on this?
Yes, please. I appreciate that. Again, just want to echo the mayor's thoughts and thank yous to staff and Medallion for working together on these community benefits, which I think are really, really critical to good planning when you have this density. We really need the green space for people to go to, the trail connections, the parks for our children to play in. It's so, so important to quality of life. And again, particularly in an area where we're going to intensify, and these areas are chosen specifically. They don't happen everywhere, but this is a location that is near to public transit. It's a major road, and to have these connections to the trails in the north is very, very important. And the park as well. So I appreciate the work that's gone into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Regional Councillor Dyes. Any other members of council like to speak on this or questions?
Point of order, please, Chair. In the the second bullet, it's not tree plating, it's tree planting. Just a typo there for the clerk, please.
Did you get that, clerk? I think you did.
Duly noted.
Okay, thank you. We have local Councillor Bauer. Councillor Bauer, sorry, it doesn't matter. You're local regional. Councillor Bauer, after you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for this report. Thank you for all the hard work that staff put into these negotiations. It's very important. It is in the best interest of the area of Ajax. I do have a couple questions about that new clause 5. So it says an estimated 2.99 million. So does that mean that these items are all being committed by the developer? And it could come way over or way under, or what could it be more expensive than that? And is that going to cause an issue?
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Bauer. The items are the items, and the dollar value is the dollar value. It's not going to be any higher. The cost of the works will be something that the town will go through their normal capital processes in order to implement those projects as they see fit within the community. Obviously, we're going to weigh the priorities and these benefits in line with development as development occurs within this area. But the commitment is the 7 community benefits with the price tag of $2.99 million.
Okay. And that is slightly different than what was in the report, but I see that a lot of work has gone into this.
Yes, that's correct. Through the reports, there's some different elements, not different elements, but some additional elements in this recommendation that were not in the report. Staff feel that like mentioned by council, that these Section 37 benefits are appropriate for the increased density being sought by Medallion, and staff feel that this represents the best outcome for the community based on the development being proposed and the density being introduced to this area.
Okay, thank you. No other questions for me, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Any other members of council wish to speak on this? I have a few questions then. So to the Director of Planning, I'm wondering why negotiations took this long. I believe we were in possession of their final submission sometime in July, August, roughly that time frame. And then, it came to our CAP meeting and we were told that this part wasn't finalized, and then we were to finalize it 2 weeks later. I'm wondering what happened with that time frame? Why wouldn't this have been previously negotiated and presented at CAB?
Through the chair to the chair to Councillor Lee. Negotiations were taking place over the better part of 2021. Staff did eventually land on a list to give to Medallion towards the end of August, leading into that CAT meeting on September 7th. And why we didn't get there on the 7th was because Medallion's, for lack of better term, executive regards or acknowledges the high Jewish holiday season, and there were lots of other commitments that got in the way of those negotiations. But we're thankful that we're able to negotiate following the September 7th meeting and council pushing us in that direction to work with Medallion. So we're happy that we got this for council's consideration this evening.
Okay, thank you for that. So ultimately, unfortunately, like, this amendment puts Councillor Khan and I in a very awkward position. I mean, very bluntly, because had this been presented as a final report back at CAB, we would have voted against it, full stop, the whole thing. As an amendment, fundamentally, like, I just want to make sure people understand we have to separate the amendment from the main motion. So, I have no idea how the rest of council is voting. I think Councillor Khan and I have been very, very forthcoming that we are against this development and the way it's been presented and the way public consultation was not reached. So as a result, I'm going to, I will ultimately agree to the amendment, because if I don't want to approach the CMC without all our, asking for the most, right? If council chooses to approve this, but I just want to say that, this process has been very contrary to previous CAP decisions where we've broken it up, and this time there is no public consultation, like there's no public feedback because we got it all 2 weeks ago. Like, that's not typically how these things go. And very bluntly, it's left a very sour taste in both myself and Councillor Khan's mouth. But regardless, strictly on the amendment, because I don't want a point of order called on me, I will support the amendment. And then once we get to the main motion, I will reiterate my concerns regarding the main motion. So I guess there was a call to vote then. Clerk, the mayor has requested a recorded vote.
Thank you. On the amendment, Mayor Collier, in favor or opposed?
Favor.
Councillor Bauer,
In favor?
Regional Councillor Crawford,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Dyes,
In favor.
Councillor Khan,
In favor.
Councillor Tyler Morin,
In favor.
Deputy Mayor Lee.
In favor. So that amendment passes 7-0, and I will hand back the chair to Mayor Collier.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. The clerk is putting up the main motion as amended. So we have the main motion as amended, moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Tyler Morin. Just one question before I open it up to questions. And I've just realized, Mr. Romanowski, we put here, thank you for correcting plating to planting, totaling an estimated 2.99. Is there a reason why we used estimated versus just totaling 2.9?
Estimated could be removed if council so wishes.
I just don't want any loopholes left in this. And so I'm just asking for your opinion on whether that is a sticking point or not.
My opinion is that we could remove the word estimated and leave it at 2.99.
I think just to be, and I'm sorry, I should have caught this before we did the vote. I will, and maybe Councillor Bauer can take that as, and Councillor Tyler Morin as a mover and seconder, take that as a friendly, I don't know, but I do think looking at it now that estimated should be struck and just totaling 2.99 should be the wording.
Yeah, I'm good with that. as a friendly. I don't think it's.
Yes, I'm also okay with that. I did bring that up in my question and I did not, I'm glad that you brought it up to strike it out. I agree with that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm good.
Is that the right way to do that, Mr. Clerk, or should we do a proper moved and seconded amendment to remove estimated?
No, a friendly amendment is acceptable in this case.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I made a mental note when Councilor was asking his questions to ask that, and then I forgot. Got excited. So does anybody wish to speak to the main motion as amended? Councilor Lee.
So, thank you, Chair, for letting me speak on this again. And I'm ultimately going to hit a lot of the points I had hit at the end of CAP before this was deferred. So I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but these community benefits, they're great. Like, I don't want to seem like ungrateful by any means. Like, these are things I think should be happening in our community, regardless of what happens with this development. But as a whole, as I said, just kind of previously during the debate regarding the amendment, we're talking about density. We're talking about massive density that this town, in an existing residential, suburb, so to speak, that you're placing right into it. And I don't think that had been done. People use the Medallion Towers on South Ajax. There weren't, any residential right, I'm going to say less than 50 feet from it. And that's what we are experiencing now. And so, I think the town has done a very poor job in, if density is the way to go, and the mayor said this many times, it's going to be infill density. This is the way of the future. Then our failure then is explaining to our residents the path to that. And instead, what we've done is we've used a single decision, which is this one, and now just forced a decision saying this is the new reality without any sort of easing them in. Regional Councilor Dyes has spoken ad nauseum to me, saying, she thinks we should have our communications department do webinars and just feedback and IMO on density and what it means and really inform our residents. But right now, where we in this microcosm we're in right now, my residents and Councilor Khan's residents, they didn't get the heads up. It was just, this is the decision, accept it. And I don't think through any of this process, we did 3 open houses. There's 100 residents per open house. This was during COVID. They're not allowed speaking now. I don't think we have truly responded to the concerns of our residents through this decision. Yes, the question is density. It's not so much parking or traffic, but it's all connected. You don't get, A without B. And the parking issues are not addressed, the planners asked me, what would you like to see in community benefits? And at the time I told them in the summer, I was like, I'd like to see 4 more floors of parking, then it might be more palpable, this development. But instead we're going to do trees, which is great. I don't want to undermine trees, but the focal point, the focal concern, is parking, traffic, safety. These are the 3 ones that, all our residents through every step of the way had brought up. And I just want to remind, just going back to the CAP meeting, this idea that, like rental units, it's going to bring crime. I don't think I heard that a single time from any of our residents, right? We got over the quote unquote NIMBY arguments. These are fundamental concerns we have with this development. And so much so that I believe regardless of the town's decision, they're going to take it upon themselves to go to the OLT. This is not some NIMBY will accept it at the end. Like they're willing to fight every step of the way. And I think it behooves us, like it's up to our town as representatives to support them in their fight. So it goes without saying that I will not be supporting this decision. I appreciate the work staff put in up to the negotiations. I just don't like the last minute nature, the forcing of our hand with the CMT, the timelines, and just this development sort of being the guinea pig for the rest of Ajax going forward. That leaves a very poor taste in my mouth. So thank you for your time. I hope our residents and myself have been able to convince any other members of council to just say, there are fights that can be had, and I'm willing to fight this on behalf of the residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to the main motion as amended? Councilor Dyes.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. I just wanted to give a shout out to the community and the residents who sent us their concerns by email and came to the open houses to speak to them. We appreciate your feedback. We heard you. There was some consistency in your messaging, And we did read these and took them into consideration. And I just wanted to say, you know, we're not the only municipality that are seeing these type of changes in our neighborhoods and these infill sites. And it's an emotional issue because it's about our homes and our families. And I understand that. But we're also a growing community, the whole GTA is. The population is booming and we are in a housing crisis. And we need choice in housing. And this gives an option of choice in housing for people, many of our children who can't afford, you know, down payments on houses. So this offers a choice for a place to be like Ajax, where we have these, you know, we have the waterfront and we have now these wonderful parks around that development. It also, it saves the taxpayers money. And I say that because I've been part of, you know, the learning and the debates on intensification for 20 years now. The population is growing again. And so we have to intensify it. We can't afford the cost of urban sprawl in these municipalities anymore. So to be able to put a density of population in one area, it helps offset the taxes because you have more population, like in Toronto, to share your property taxes and the cost of living here. And you also, you know, have less infrastructure that you have to pay for and maintain when you have intensification. And it has to be in the appropriate areas. And we've chosen that through our official plan and the region's official plan. It meets all the provincial legislation. So really to say that it's okay, it happens in Pickering, it happens in Whitby, it happens in other parts of Durham, but not in Ajax, is difficult because we really don't have anything to appeal on when we take it to LPAT. So it's a tough decision to make, but I have to support intensification in the right places. For those reasons, I think we need to look at affordability in the future for the municipality and our residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of council wish to speak to this? Councillor Khan?
Thank you, Chair, Mr. Mayor. You know, I need to commend Councillor Lee on this because he did most of the heavy lifting in this. He's worked closely with the residents, and we take this very personally and quite emotionally. We have lost a lot of sleep over this. And again, you know, our constituents have not been satisfied with the information they've been given. And we will be supporting our constituents with this. And again, I'm sorry, but we can't support this. I can't support this. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other member of council wish to speak to this?
I'll ask for a recorded vote, Mayor Collier.
Okay, recorded vote, please, Mr. Clerk. I'm just going to speak to it quickly. I'll try not to repeat what Councillor Dies has said, but I do agree. This, as I said before, it's not new. This has been on our plate since 2010. I remember looking at it before the 2010 election and cringing a little bit as the local councillor at the time. But I've been very careful and very clear with the residents right from the start on managing expectations. And the expectations on this is allowed. This is in our official plan. This is in the regional official plan. This conforms to the provincial policy statement, which is part of the Planning Act under Section 3. This conforms to the growth plan for Greater Toronto, for Greater Golden Horseshoe. Our staff support it. Our legal opinion that we got supports it. I mean, this is something that checks all the boxes. I was very clear with the residents right from the start. These buildings are going to be there. There's nothing this council can do to stop those buildings from going there. This project is allowed. Whatever people may have seen in the planning, in the sales office, I mean, a lot has changed since 2010. We brought out official plan amendment 41, I believe it is, which speaks to density since then and increased density. Things change, but this zoning was in place back then when a lot of people bought their houses. So I can't speak to whether due diligence was done or not when people purchased their homes, but it's up to people to find out what the vacant lot is next to you is zoned for. That's kind of an important piece when you are buying a property and spending that much money. And the fact is, this is allowed. As to density, I mean, I already quoted the section in our official plan that speaks to density. Whether there's 800 or 1,000 or 1,300 units, the buildings will remain the same. And respectfully, I didn't hear any arguments. And again, I'm not a planner or an engineer or a lawyer, and none of us are. So we have to take the advice from the experts. And when our own town planners, who are completely unbiased, and you know, some people insinuated otherwise, but that is just not the fact. This developer is not getting any preferential treatment. Our staff are completely unbiased. They follow the same planning act that everybody else follows in any municipality, and this would be treated the same in all. And I hope I was clear with the residents on this. This is not something, if they're looking for us to turn it down and make the other residents of Ajax, all residents of Ajax, incur the very large expense in the hundreds of thousands of an unwinnable Ontario Land Tribunal appeal, I'm not going to do that. I absolutely support my residents, and these are, but I can't pass on significant costs like that to the other 130,000 to appease this 1,700 or however many are on the petition. I just want to add one other thing, and that is we are bound as a council by a code of conduct that we all approved unanimously. And this code of conduct, section 2.1.2, members shall observe and act with the highest standard of ethical conduct and integrity. And section 2.1.7, members shall uphold the spirit and the letter of the laws of Ontario and Canada and the laws and policies adopted by the council. That's a code of conduct that this council approved unanimously and abide by. And it's incumbent on us to follow that. And what the residents are asking us to do by turning this down is to not follow that code of conduct, because the Planning Act is a law of Ontario, and this conforms to that law. And it is incumbent on this council to follow that law. So I was very glad to see unanimous support of the Section 37. With all due respect, I find it absolutely disingenuous to support that, but then not support the thing as a whole. I'm glad you asked for a recorded vote, Councillor Lee, and I will be supporting this. Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
So on the motion as amended, in favor or opposed, Regional Councillor Lee,
Opposed.
Councillor Tyler Morin,
Favor.
Councillor Bauer,
In favor?
Regional Councillor Crawford,
In favor?
Regional Councillor Dyes,
In favor?
Councillor Khan,
Opposed.
Mayor Collier,
In favor. And that carries on a vote of 5-2. Moving on to our next item. Regional Council reports. Do we have any regional council reports? Councillor Dyes and then Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. So it's always difficult. My committee at the region is Health and Social Services, and we always have a COVID update, which is outdated by the time we have our council meeting to report to you. But we did have a really interesting presentation on the health impacts of climate change at our Health and Social Services meeting. And basically discussing about, the need to address climate change, which requires recognizing systemic issues that are in place. And it impacts our health, and it's increasing very, very rapidly. And it's not just about the health of everybody, it's also about people who are marginalized, living in poverty or experiencing racism, and those who are really most vulnerable in our society, because it's very interconnected, and those vulnerable people will be impacted. They're saying that in about 79 years, we are going to see a decline in air quality, and it's about the ozone layer and it's kind of reducing in size and becoming more concentrated. So that will be a huge issue for people who have any breathing difficulties, asthma, things like that. We're going to see more and more very acute problems there. We're also going to see, which I thought was interesting, and it was in our correspondence today from St. Catharines, was about the increase of Lyme disease. And I have seen that increase over the last 10, 15 years. If you camp, you'll notice there's always signs about ticks. And I don't remember that. I've been camping for years and don't remember that years ago when I was young and camping. So it is on the rise. And of course, the hotter temperatures are what we're experiencing now. So really, the impacts are going to be severe. Anybody with heart problems are going to have problems with hotter temperatures or any other medical issues. So, and that's all about the greenhouse gas measures. And so it's all goes in hand with what we're trying to do with reducing those greenhouse gases and making the air we breathe a lot better for everybody's health. It was, it's on the website if you want to look at it. But there is, I mean, it was kind of frightening, really. And I guess the message that I took out of this is we always look at climate change as something in the future, but it's not, it's right now. So I would Google it. It's on, like I say, it's on the regionaldurham.ca. If you look at the Health and Social Services meeting for September, that presentation is there. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford was next.
Before I do my presentation, I had a question to Councillor Dyes around Dr. Kyle's announcement of the addition to the Section 22. It seemed to cause quite the discussion on social media. My understanding is Dr. Kyle can make whatever decisions he wants. He does not have to go through regional council, correct? Is that correct? I mean, it seems to be that way all the way through the pandemic. So this was not a decision that was made by regional council.
It's made, well, as you know, through the pandemic, where it's an emergency condition, we have appointed people to make decisions for us. And so in the town of Ajax, you know, there's a committee, and there's the mayor and the CAO are the ones that are making, you know, quick decisions for COVID. It's much like that at the region as well. And he does bring things to Health and Social Services, but everything is so very, very fluid and so quick. It's difficult to keep on top of information. It changes all the time.
So this new Section 22, where you're supposed to keep track of who comes into your homes if you have a big party, it's not that you have to report that you're having a party. It's simply that you just keep a track of who you invited.
Correct.
And if there was an outbreak or somebody happened to contract COVID, then the automatic question is, where were you? And your name might come up on that list. So they're going to contact you to see who else might have been exposed. That's all it is, right? It's not like they're asking any personal information prior to a party or whatever you're having. It's nothing like that, correct?
It's just providing names. If you have a gathering of 2 people or more from different households, it's just making sure you take note of the date and the information of the people were there. And so that information is on hand if they need it.
Yeah, so you stick it in a drawer for like a month or whatever. And then if you need it, then you've got that information right away.
That's right.
Okay, good. Thank you. Just to clear that up. I had quite a kerfuffle on social media. Anyway, okay, so this is a Vision Zero update. Oh, what happened? Everything just disappeared on me. I'm so sorry. Okay. I just wanted to let you know that the red light camera program has issued roughly 657 tickets over 2020, 1,525 over 2021, and a total of 2,182 tickets are given out for the red light program. That is, and then the ASE program, over 2020, we have given out 27,000 tickets. 2021, 20,000 tickets, totaling over 47,000 tickets have been given out over just the regional ASE program over the last year. The launch of the ASE program, or the red light camera, was September 2020. And this data is up to August 31st. So the full rotation of the 4 ASE units have gone now through all the sites, the regional sites, and we've now got the 4 fixed units that are going to go at the original sites that we started with. So for Ajax, we only have 1 site, so it's at Bailey and Harwood. That will become a fixed red light speed camera. It won't be moved. One of the things that we found was there was quite a bit of damage, because obviously you're putting them in front of high schools on regional roads and or at Durham College. And so they're at a level where people can actually just spray paint over top of the camera. So these permanent cameras will be mounted on poles, so that we're hoping that there will be less damage. So anyway, that will be happening by the end of the year, I believe. We have seen 37% improvement in speeding compliance, which is the highest and most effective form of reducing speed that they've ever tried. 12 red light cameras in operation. There's no additional sites currently planned. Pickering has, as you've probably seen, has their first camera operational, and we of course are working on getting our cameras up and going. And there's a number of ASE tickets declining through the program since it started, and that's only after a year, so that's good news. This may or not be concern to you, but there's the other part of Vision Zero for the rural areas are to be adding more roundabouts. Roundabouts can be confusing for residents, but they are definitely an effective way of reducing speed through those areas. And I can have this, I can send it out to regional council or to council if you're interested in it, just so you have the information. And that's pretty much it. If there's any questions.
Well, let's go on and see if Councillor Lee has a presentation first, and we'll get the questions when everybody's given their.
Nothing on my side, Chair.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on the regional council reports before I ask mine? I want to ask Councillor Crawford about the regional automatic speed enforcement. Do they have any stats on how much speed was reduced throughout the first year?
All they've done is a percentage of 37% have been reduced. There's been a reduction of all speeds by 37%.
Okay. I think that's important, because we in Ajax, the 90-day warning signs just went up. So in 90 days, Ajax will have 3 automatic speed enforcement cameras out of our own. Can you tell me, did Ajax or any other municipality receive any of the revenue that's been generated by the region and their automatic speed enforcement or red light camera projects?
That I can't tell you. You'd have to ask your director of finance. I have not heard any of that yet. That doesn't come up in our meetings.
I suspect I know the answer, but I'm not going to say it because I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just trying to dispel the myth that this is a cash grab, because I think they're more of a break-even proposal.
The idea is not to make money. The idea is to change behavior. The idea is not to be dinging people all the time. It is a change behavior. And, you know, while the cameras are there, they are change behavior. The one thing that I will say, and I don't know if Pickering has done this, we do have speed boards up in the areas that the cameras are going to be going. So those are recording valuable information all the time, so that when the cameras are in those areas, we are actually turning those cameras on at the critical time where the speeding is happening. That's why the cameras are up now. They're recording all of that information, because there's no point putting a camera on if there's no speeding at that time. So you want to make sure that you're capturing when the speeding is happening.
Okay. Thank you. Textbook answer.
What's that?
Anything further? I said textbook answer, exactly what I was looking for. Any other questions on the regional council reports? Hearing none, we have moved by Councillor Lee, second by Councillor Bauer, that the Regional Council reports of September 21st, 2021 be received for information. Those in favor of receipt of the reports, the verbal reports? Any opposed? No, that's carried. I have next a motion to suspend the rules of procedure. This requires 2/3. Moved by Councillor Khan, second by Councillor Bauer, that the rules of procedure be suspended in order to introduce a motion without notice regarding bike storage lockers at the Ajax GO station. Those in favor of suspending the rules? I need 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Councillor Dice? 6. There we go. That's carried. Moving on to business arising from notice of motion. Changes required to make new builds more affordable and achievable for buyers. Moved by Councillor Khan, second by Councillor Tyler Moore. And Councillor Khan, please take it away.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you, Councillor Tyler Moore, for supporting me with this. We've been discussing this and working on it since June, before the break. And it's the changes required to make new builds more affordable, achievable for buyers. Minimum down payment for a resale property is usually around 5%. While a pre-construction property can go as high as 25%. Now, on an $800,000 property, that's $200,000, which buyers have to come up with before they can even move in. And new builds are notorious for delays in construction, causing deposits to sit in trust, and even more frustrating, some new builds are simply canceled and deposits returned without any earned interest. Now, there's no regulation around deposits for new builds. And I'm requesting that the Ontario government work with Tarion, and Tarion is a regulator of Ontario's new home building industry, the development sector, and lending organizations to lock deposits in at 5% for new builds to lessen the burden and strain on buyers, provide more stability, and make the process more affordable and manageable for all parties. And I hope I can get your support on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. As seconder, Councillor Tyler Moore, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Khan, for including me on this. You know, this is a very sort of no-brainer ask, I would suggest. However, I think it's very important that all levels of government try and do something, anything we can do to try and nudge things along. We all have kids that are similar in age, well, except for Finn. But, you know, everybody's trying to get going. We have millennial kids, kids are in their teens, 20s, and it's a very, very difficult time right now. Everybody knows this. So if you know, our little council can nudge things along, and there's 455 councils in Ontario, if all of them do it, you know, and say to the Ontario government, let's try and make this more realistic, because $35,000, $40,000, $50,000 is one thing. You know, the parents help them out a bit, but when young people have to come up with $250,000 or $175,000, forget it. Very, very difficult. So I would absolutely, I'm so happy to support this, and hope we can get support from our council colleagues. Thanks again.
Any questions from members of council? I think since I have some questions, you inadvertently said I have no brain, because this is a no-brainer. But I do have a couple of questions. I just want to know, how did you, I guess to the mover, Councillor Khan, come up with the 5% for new builds?
Well, sorry, through you to you, Mr. Chair. The resale properties go for 5%, and it's quite manageable. So I'd figure if we can have the same thing happening for new builds, it would be more affordable for new home buyers.
Okay, I ask because as someone who built a building last year, I realized that lumber prices have more than doubled in the last year. And I had the Mayor's Golf Tournament a couple of weeks ago, and I had the opportunity to speak with some of the builders. In this case, it was John Body Homes, and asked that question. I mean, how are you making out in this, given you maybe sold a house last year for a certain price, and now you have to build it this year, and your cost of materials has doubled? And his answer was, they're really struggling. So I guess my question is, have you considered that the reason why the deposits are higher is because the builders require the funds to build the building? For that, rather than just to hold the money for a period of time, because that's what I was told is the case.
Yeah, we're looking for the deposit. I mean, the cost of doing business is from the builders. This is their project. It's their cost of doing business. We're looking at the buyers who need to start buying. But if they raise their price from 800,000 to $1.6 million, the 5% is the 5%.
Okay, well, I definitely, you know, I have, Jim Rose and I have 4 kids ourselves, and they're all around the age 19 to 28 that are going to be looking. Well, actually, one of them has already bought a home last year, and they've gone through that. And yeah, we helped them out a little bit, Councillor Tyler Morin, because that's what parents do. But from a new home perspective, I guess the question is, did you speak with the building industry? Because I did, and I got a different story. So for me to support a 5%, I don't think I can do that, because I know the reason why they need a higher deposit. So is there any flexibility there? Is the 5%? I won't amend somebody else's motion, but I don't think that's realistic. So that's why I'm asking the question from the builder's perspective, because there's some builders bigger than others who maybe can't build a whole subdivision and then get the money later. They require that upfront commitment.
Yeah, and I like the motion is asking and is referring to some of these things that they take forever to build. They promise you in a year and it comes back in 3 years, sometimes even canceled, your money's returned. Mr. Mayor, we're just trying to have some control of it, and we're asking builders or the Ontario government actually to work with Tarion to come up with something palpable for new home buyers.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, yeah, so obviously, if you already own a home, you know, and you bought it for, like all of us, you know, 200 whatever, you know, like, and all of a sudden it's now worth $1 million, you're in a much different position than a young couple. So this motion speaks to that. I'm not suggesting that it speaks to the entire, you know, process, and I do appreciate, as I always do, your insight, but I understand that this maybe does speak more to the overall than maybe we thought it did. However, you know, it's just our attempt to try and help in some way, you know, people that are trying to get going. But I understand what you're saying.
No, I get it. What I was going to suggest, and I won't make the amendment because I'm not amending somebody else's motion, but would you consider, instead of saying 5%, which may or may not be reasonable, I don't know, that just be requested to work with Tarion, the regulator for Ontario's new home building, the development sector, and lending organizations to reduce deposits for new builds to lessen the burden and strain on buyers. Because then we're asking them to do that, and I just don't think 5% is an achievable, and but I think it can probably be reduced. And would you consider that?
I would consider that, Mr. Mayor, Chair. But again, 5% of the cost of the property is 5%, be it 800,000 or $2 million. It's the down payment to start, right? But yes, rather than going back and forth with this, I think that's very fair. I would consider that, and I would ask that it be amended.
Is that a friendly?
That's a friendly, but I would like to consult with my seconder as well, if you think that is a.
I think we're ultimately saying the same thing. The mayor is suggesting that, you know, maybe we can make this a little bit more realistic rather than a pie in the sky type of thing where, you know, sure, sounds great, but is this actually going to happen? So with that being said, yeah, if we want to change the wording a bit, I mean, we're like I said at the very beginning, the motion is speaking to anything we can do at all to help amend this. And the people that are buying, and we're suggesting pay 5%, they're ultimately going to pay 100%. Like, you know, it's just a kickoff point where we're saying, okay, when they first get in, you know, they don't have the, you know what I'm saying, the funds to let 180 grand sit in an account. Anyway,
It's a
so,
start, right?
yeah.
But
Well,
yes, yes, I would friendly amendment. Yes, I'm up to that.
Well, and that's fine. I do want to support it. I do absolutely can't say it, emphasize young people today. I want it to be accurate and something that's achievable. So thank you for that. Those are my questions. Anything further by any members of council?
So sorry, was this amended or not? Like, and was the wording updated?
We're going to tweak it, I believe.
That was a friendly.
So you gotta do it now then, right?
Yeah, we got to do it now, right?
Yeah. So, Mr. Clerk,
we have
can
some
you do your
support,
magic?
support?
And then the mayor was not amending it, but he gave all the wording to it. So I mean, like, I don't know if the clerk caught it the first time.
And I was just trying to mold it a little bit. That's all.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's a friendly amendment, we can make sure that the revised wording is reflected in the final minutes for the meeting.
Thank you. I wasn't sure what was going on. Thank you.
I'm fine with that. I'm as a seconder,
Okay.
Councillor Khan.
I am good with that as well.
Those in favor?
Sorry,
As
could you
amended.
please, I just clarify what it will now read.
From my understanding, Mr. Clerk, and lending organizations to reduce deposits for new builds to lessen the burden and strain on buyers. Is that correct?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Councillor Lee, you look perplexed.
No, I'm good. No, yeah, it's all good. That's my resting face, Chair.
Just before we move on, Clerk, can you see that it's sent to us before you publish it in the minutes, final minutes, please?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you. Thank you kindly.
And just one other friendly, I don't mind bringing this to Ontario Big City Mayors as well at the next meeting if the mover and seconder would like. So
Thank you.
can we vote now? Okay, those in favor? Any opposed? I don't see any opposed. That carries. That's unanimous. Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next,
I'm sorry, sorry, Mayor, if I may just kind of, I guess as a point of order, could you start raising your hand? A lot of times, I don't know how you're voting. I know you know in your mind, but just a lot of times, if you could just also just physically raise your hand as well, it would make me feel a lot better.
I thought he opposed that myself. Yeah, but
Right, yeah, I wasn't sure sometimes, so thank you.
Because I only vote in a recorded vote or a tie. So moving on to the next, we have business arises from those motion, access to affordable and accessible childcare, moved by Councillor Lee and second by Councillor Khan. Please go ahead, Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. This one's kind of, well, I guess it was near and dear to my heart. Yeah, so daycare is expensive. A lot of parents understand this. And, in a lot of cases, especially with the pandemic, you had 2 working parents and, you had to pay for daycare, otherwise work was not getting done. Now, I know firsthand, just having gone through the daycare system, that we were paying about, over $12,000 a year. And that's money that could have otherwise been going towards education, anything else. But this is like a mandatory cost. So a lot of parents right now are facing a reality of, do I, pay for daycare, or do I remove myself from the workforce to watch my, toddler until they go into the school system and so forth. And so, this kind of was spurred because I guess the current government, the renewed government, had a daycare plan that they're trying to negotiate with the provinces to bring daycare costs down by 50% by 2022, and then bring costs down as much as, or as little as $10 a day by 2025 to 26 or sooner. And a lot of provinces had actually gone through with this. I believe it was BC, Nova Scotia, the Yukon Territories, PEI, Newfoundland, Labrador, and Quebec. And for some reason, our Ontario government has not taken a stand on this or taken the federal government up on this offer. So really, the resolution so much is just kind of prodding the provincial government, very similar to the last motion, to take a stance, negotiate with the federal government for a daycare solution in the most populated province in the country. And the most populated city center, GTHA, in the country as well. We need this more than anyone else right now, I would argue. And I would love for the Ontario government to step up and represent, working parents and parents that need the support, low income families. $10 is a great cost that, can bring people back to work now without having to make those sacrifices. So as a result, I would definitely appreciate your support on the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor, who is the next one? Khan, I think? No, who is the second on this one? Let me go back. Councillor Khan, do you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, as a home, from a home with many children, you know, there was no way my wife could have gone to work because we cannot afford it. So this is why I've always been working 3 jobs. And, you know, we really would like if the governments can work together to move this forward. And Councillor Lee, thank you again for bringing me on and educating me on the depth of this and how much that we, you know, we just take it for granted that we have to work and do that stuff. But if there is help that can be given to our residents, we would really appreciate it. So thank you, Councillor Lee, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Crawford, then Councillor Dice.
I'm just wondering if this is something you can bring to the big city mayors also.
I can. I was actually going to ask, now that the federal election is over and the government that brought forward the $10 childcare is back in, do we still need Section 2? I absolutely support Section 3 because I think the provincial government does need to commit, but do we still need bullet 2?
Just based on timing of the motion, yeah, I wasn't aware which government was going to come into power. So I think regardless, we were still calling upon them to implement a national child. Like they may change by their first throne speech, right? So I would just kind of keep it in. It's just reaffirming our commitment.
I won't make any jokes about broken campaign promises. Councillor Dice, you were next.
Thank you. I absolutely support this motion. I think it's really, really important that we have that $10 a day daycare. We've noted as $5 daycare for years because Quebec had it and it worked extremely well. And guess what? The economic development in their province went sky high because if you put that extra money from that second person working in your household and you have children, what are you going to do with that money? You're going to spend it on your kids and your community. So it really is very important, not only for that, it's a financial investment in your community, but also for women who can now go out and work. You know, we had careers before we had children, and it's important that we're able to follow that path if we choose to. So yes, I do support this, and thank you for bringing it forward.
Okay, anything further? Just to the mover and seconder, is that just a friendly to add Councillor Crawford's about Ontario big city mayors onto there as well?
Yes, that is fine. Being incredibly friendly today, folks.
Very friendly. We're a friendly bunch. Okay, anything further? Okay, seeing none. Those in favor of the motion? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Any opposed? None opposed. That is carried unanimously. Yeah, I didn't raise my hand, but it's carried. Finally, the last motion was the walk-on motion by Councillor Tyler Morin. Please go ahead on the bike storage.
Thank you so much, Your Worship, and to my colleagues, council colleagues. I apologize. There was a miscommunication, mine, that, and I didn't get this out in time where it would normally go, so you could review it. This is something that Marilyn Crawford and I, who's the seconder, the regional councillor, have been, sort of wearing and talking about with residents, some very key residents that ride their bikes to the GO train every day. Again, this is something that would seem to be a no-brainer. I probably shouldn't use that vernacular again. However, it's just a bike locker that we're asking for that the province provides at the Ajax GO train station, so people can be encouraged to ride their bicycles, have them locked up where they're in a safe and dry place. And that's what really this speaks about. And I would hope we can get support in this. I would ask your support. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Crawford?
Yes, it's interesting when Carolyn Mulroney, what her role is. I think she's in charge of the infrastructure for transportation, whatever. She came to announce in Ajax at the GO station all about this bright expansion she was very, very proud of. We asked her about the bike lockers right there and then. She goes, oh, that makes sense. So apparently you need to make a motion because you just can't talk to somebody and it gets done. So this is where this motion came from, because we actually asked her and she said, that's a good idea. Anyway, it is a no-brainer, because if we really believe in active transportation, if we really want to reduce, the exhaust in the cars and the traffic and everything else, we have to provide a place where people can ride their bikes to the GO station and put them away with safety. So it really is a no-brainer. I'm done. That's it. No more.
I actually have a meeting with Minister Mulroney's office. I think it's next week. So I'll make sure I bring this up during our discussion as well. We'll be talking also about the 412 entrance at Roslyn and the public art that you brought up, Councillor Crawford, before on a couple of things. Councillor Lee.
I just want to ask, do we need a friendly to present this to big city mayors, or it's too small potatoes?
Since this is a local, no, I would not.
Okay, just want to make sure. Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Here, big city mayors. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Those in favor of the motion? I see 6 hands. That's carried. Thank you. That concludes our motions. Moving on to bylaws. We have moved by Councillor Bauer, second by Councillor Lee, that bylaw number 51-2021 to 61-2021 be read a first, second, third time and passed. And these are the bylaws to do with our pets and exotic animals and all that other fun stuff. Any questions on the bylaws? Okay, those in favor of approval? Any opposed? None opposed. That's carried. Now moving on to motion to convene into a closed session. We have moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Khan. The council convene into a closed session pursuant to section 239, subparagraph 2B of the Municipal Act to discuss a personal matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. Those in favor of going in camera, please raise your hands. I see all hands. That is carried. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we are live again.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I have a motion moved by Councillor Khan, second by Councillor Bauer, that Ajax Council ratify the decisions made in camera. Those in favor of ratifying? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See all 6 hands. That is carried. Thank you. Any notice of motion? Councillor Lee.
I'll be bringing forth a motion asking staff to examine street parking, overnight street parking passes like they have in Toronto that are semi-annual. So I was going to present it this month. We just couldn't get all the wording out. So hopefully it'll be done for October. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other notes of motion by any member of council? Okay, hearing none. Any new business or announcements? Councillor Tyler Moore.
Am I muted?
Nope.
I'm not muted, sorry. Marilyn Crawford and I, Regional Councillor, Ward 1 Councillor, and myself will be hosting a ward community meeting on September 27th at 7 p.m. We'll be discussing the issues that matter to you. And as always, there will be an opportunity to ask questions and provide thoughts throughout the meeting. You do need to pre-register. We'll be posting that on our social media feeds. Most of our friends do follow us. And if you're already registered, you're probably in the queue. Yes, so that's happening next Tuesday, September 27th at 7 p.m. No, next Monday. Sorry, is it Monday? 27th? Yes. Okay. Thank you. 27th.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Chair. Good things are happening on Monday, September 27th. The Ward 3 councillors are also having a ward meeting at 7 o'clock. Registration is required, and we'll be talking about things that are important in Ward 3 and in Ajax. So hopefully you can come. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements?
Mayor?
Councillor Khan.
Ajaxians, check your mailboxes. Our ward council newsletters have been mailed out, and I received mine in my mailbox today. So it's fantastic. We all worked really hard to update you on what we've been doing, and also to thank you for the support. So please clear your mailboxes early and check that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? I will just announce very quickly, if there's anybody left watching, that last Saturday was the Smokes Poutineery World CEO Poutine Eating Challenge. And we raised over 100,000, well, sorry, we raised $100,000 for We Care charities for Easter Seal kids to go to camps. So thank you everyone for your support. Really appreciate it. I got down 4 boxes, up from 3 last time. I'll go for 5 next year. Thank you. Nothing further? Okay. We have confirming bylaw moved by Councillor Crawford, second by Councillor Lee. Let me just pull this up. The bylaw number 62-2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council of the Corporation of Town of Ajax at its regular meeting held on September 21st, 2021, be read a first, second, third time and passed. Those in favor of the confirming bylaw? Any opposed? None opposed. That's carried. And finally, moved by Councillor Dye, second by Councillor Bauer, that the September 21st, 2021 meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Those in favor? That is carried.